Welcome to the Bravo Papers, a safe space for all us Bravo fans who love to analyze, deconstruct, and talk about our favorite Bravo shows ad nauseum. There's no such thing as overanalyzing or reading too much into your favorite Bravo shows and Bravo celebrities here. So join me, Bravo and Botox, as I find the depth amongst the shallow. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bravo Papers podcast. And you are here with your host, Bravo and Botox. And I'm doing a special episode today. I'm calling it a bonus episode because I was looking at my agenda and it has a lot on it. So, there is one particular thing that I think deserves its own episode. That is Bethenny versus Bravo, supposedly. We'll get into that. But I wanted to dedicate an episode to it because there's a lot to say and I have a lot of opinions on it. And we all know that I love talking about my own opinions. Hopefully you don't mind hearing about my opinions and that's why you're here. So let's go. Now, before we start, we got to do our thing, which is important. Please rate, review, subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts, go to the little stars at the bottom, press the 5. I know it's a small thing and that you forget about it and you go on with your day, but it means so much to me and the podcast, helps the podcast grow, all that delicious, wonderful stuff that we want and that we love. If you're listening and you want to take a screenshot and share it on social media, on Instagram, tag me. I love that. Please tell someone, whoever you know. This is the currency. I need you to help me. I'm trying to grow the podcast so, I can use all the help I can get. And the more you share, the more I can get more sponsors, do more episodes, all that kind of good stuff, and improve and make the show better. So spread the word. Follow my Instagram at Bravo and Botox for all my hilarious Twitter roundups, or the Bravo Papers podcast on Instagram as well for, updates on the pod, information when I release new episodes, all that kind of stuff. I also have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/@theBravoPapers. If you're a YouTube person and you want to listen to the podcast on there, it's great. It's free. There's no ads. Go for it. Please, please, please subscribe. Even if you don't listen on Bravo or on YouTube, please just subscribe anyways because I need more subscribers. Thank you. Okay, so let's get into it because this has been a big to-do, as they say. It is Monday, July 24th when I'm recording. Quite a bit has happened. And, there's been a lot of chatter on Twitter or X or whatever the hell it's called now. I mean, I can't believe that Elon Musk is changing the name. This man is like the bane of my existence. And now what am I supposed to do? Like an X Twitter roundup? What is that? That sounds so stupid. I can't do that. I mean, I'm just going to keep calling them Twitter roundups for now. And I don't know. I'm hoping that Musk is tomorrow going to be like, I'm stepping down. Bye, everyone. Like, that's what I'm hoping. Okay. So we'll see what happens. But as you've heard, there's been a lot of chat, as I was saying. Sorry, I got sidetracked. And people are discussing, unions, organized labor, things of that sort, mainly due to the writer's strike. So the writer's strike is going on in Hollywood and I guess other places as well. And, they're asking for fair wages and pay. And it has sort of offshooted into other conversations about other people in other industries, including and especially the entertainment industry. So Bethenny Frankel, Ms. Skinny Girl herself, has jumped in and joined the convo to literally no one's surprise, because Bethenny has something to say about everything. So I'm going to kind of tell the story about where this all came from, because if you're not as plugged in to Bravo social media, then yeah, you might, need a little bit of background. I unfortunately am plugged into Bethenny. I say unfortunately because she never stops, so it's a lot. And if I'm going to be honest with you, usually when I see a video of Bethenny talking to a phone camera, I just keep scrolling. Because if it's anything that's actually notable and important and of worth, it'll get some momentum, it'll get shared to a high level, and someone will summarize it, which I appreciate very much because then I don't have to listen to her. Now, in this case, I did have to listen to her, and I did the things that I do for you all. I listened to a lot of her in the last 24 hours or more, I should say, the last few days. First, I have to make a confession, which is that I am a reformed Bethenny Frankel stan. I used to love Bethenny. For a long time, she was my number one favorite housewife. Now, I'm talking like this was like a few years ago. Probably like before she was kind of like one of my favorites up until pandemic-ish. But probably even before that, I kind of fell off the Bethenny love train, we'll call it. I didn't know a ton about her, and I watched The Real Housewives of New York, and if you heard me on Kendrick's podcast, which I was a guest on Reality Comics 2, go listen. You got to scroll back, but it's there. He was asking me, how did I get into Housewives and Bravo? And for me, I was a late starter. But I went in like, I don't know. I went in hard when I got into Bravo. It wasn't like I slowly, dipped my toes in. It was like I jumped head first, and I watched one series, I watched the next, and so on and so on. And then, within 3 years, I'd watch them all. Within 2 years after that, I'd watch them all multiple times and, became your resident expert that you see here today. So Bethenny was someone that I really liked. I watched The Real Housewives of New York. She was like the underdog. I love the underdog. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that Jill Zarin would, just sort of be all jealous of how successful Bethenny was and wouldn't be happy for her. I was all into it. I was devastated when they stopped being friends, but I was also happy when Jill got fired. And no, I didn't watch it live in real time, but I did my best. The first time I watched all the series, I tried not to look anything up because I wanted to know, I wanted it to be fresh. So I didn't know when Jill would be fired. I didn't know all that. So when Jill was fired season 4 or 5, and they all, when they did that big cast overhaul, I was as shook as everyone who watched it live because I didn't go online and look it up. I did by accident come across the fact that Bethenny left the show eventually. So I knew that was going to happen, but I didn't know how or why. So I was a big Bethenny supporter, mainly because I thought she was funny, which she is. She was so funny on New York. She was really like the Greek chorus. She did a great job of, she's a confessional queen. She had funny one-liners. She was witty. She was quick. She had all that stuff. And, she was surrounded by these crazy women, and she was there to point it out. Even though Bethenny is also crazy, she's crazy in a different way, and in a way where she's good at almost convincing you that she's not crazy. And she's got this savviness and wittiness about her that just pulls you onto her side. Whereas she was surrounded by people who were very, how do I say this? Not self-aware. Like Ramona, Sonia, Luann, Kelly Bensimon. Like, can you name a more insane group of not self-aware people? You can't. So even though Bethenny, you could argue Bethenny's not self-aware, but compared to them, she actually is. That's not saying much, but that's true. So, for a long time I was a Bethenny stan. I was on her side about Carol when she had the Carol thing. I still kind of am, if I'm going to be honest. But that's another thing for another day. But, all that being said, lately and in the last few years, Bethenny on social media has completely changed my mind about her. At first, I tried to kind of defend her. Before I had my Instagram account, Bravo and Botox, if people were kind of arguing about her on like Reddit or whatever, I would sometimes pipe in, even though I didn't really take part in Reddit a lot in terms of making comments. I was more of a stalker. But I would sometimes, and, I sort of understood where she was coming from sometimes. And I liked to think that she was a good person because, she had her be strong thing. But the more time that's gone on, the more I've realized that there is really nothing about Bethenny that isn't driven by, I think, some kind of personality disorder. I don't know what it is. I know everybody likes to call everyone a narcissist and fall back on the narcissistic personality disorder. I don't know if that's it. Narcissism is, because I looked into it when I was during the Scandival time, and I saw that, we all have narcissistic tendencies, but you're not labeled it as having a personality disorder until it starts to get to the point where it's getting in the way of your ability to function well in life, relationships, work, etc. So I'm not here to diagnose her. I don't know what her deal is, but something, I don't think she's fully plugged in to the average person. I think I think she's pretty detached from that at this point, even though she would have you think that she's quite in tune with the average person. I also feel like, she's got a really big ego at the least. Okay. So let's just go with that. So Bethenny commenting on all this union stuff, it's hard to digest, and it's controversial for a reason, because it's coming from her. And that's kind of one of the issues with it. So let's get into this, and I'll kind of make my commentary about the specifics of the problem as we go. So I'm going to start with, where did this all come from? So Bethenny recently had Jill Zarin on her podcast. If you are not an OG New York fan, or you don't know a lot about that, Jill Zarin was like a New York, Manhattan, Upper East Side socialite type. She was on The Real Housewives of New York, and she was fired after season 4 because, the audience really turned on her, because one, she turned on Bethenny season 3. People didn't like that. And then season 4, she just kind of came off a little bit miserable, and people were just over it. Anyways, Jill and Bethenny were besties. They had like this great relationship of like, Jill, the connected woman who knew everyone in New York, who, was sort of like had this like, this fabulous circle, as she said, right? And she sort of was there for Bethenny when Bethenny had nothing. When Bethenny came on the show, got paid nothing, had, I think she said she had like a few grand in her bank account, and that was it. And she didn't know what she was going to do. So the two of them, their friendship disintegrated, because of the show. And again, I'm not saying that in a like, it's Bravo's fault, they weren't friends, but, Bethenny's success and it wasn't overnight. I don't mean like overnight in the sense of like, she didn't do any work, because we know she worked for it. I just mean it was quick. It was a quick rise from like being the underdog of the New York group to all of a sudden being the richest and the most successful because of Skinny Girl. So, their friendship disintegrated, but recently I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was in the last year. Bethenny and Jill ended up on an airplane together and they reconnected and they talked. And I think it was kind of one of those just, happenstances. And because of that and a lot of other things, the stars aligned. And recently, Bethenny had Jill Zarin on her podcast. So on the podcast, they catch up, they talk about things, it gets emotional at times. And Jill reveals one thing that was revealed, and this has made headlines and gone viral, is that Jill says that she didn't know Bethenny and Real Housewives of New York would be filming, or that Bethenny was mic'd at Bobby's funeral. So if you remember Jill Zarin's husband, Bobby, we all loved him. Great guy. He loved Jill. He was like, the doting husband. He would buy her nice gifts. Seemed like a great guy. He, rest in peace, passed away from cancer, and Jill's funeral ended up being filmed for season 10 of The Real Housewives of New York. Now, not the actual funeral inside. It was a quick scene where Bethenny Bethenny goes to the funeral, sees Jill outside of the funeral, like outside the doors on the streets of New York, and they have this like emotional moment. And, Jill says, "I'm all alone. I don't know what to do." And I mean, Bethenny's reply is, to me kind of points to my issue with Bethenny. Bethenny's reaction is, I'm alone too. It's like, okay, her husband just died. Can you, maybe you are alone, but can you relax? Anyways. So Jill says, "I had no idea you were mic'd and that, at that moment." Sort of, I think she says, "I knew cameras were there. I didn't know you were mic'd and that you would be filming it for them." And Bethenny has this big reaction on the podcast. She's like, "I thought you wanted that. Bravo told me you wanted to film, right? And that, I can't believe this. I was tricked. I was deceived. I feel dirty and disgusting." And the two of them are just, going on and on. Okay. This doesn't make sense though. Okay. A lot of people on social media have been so distracted by just some of the ethics around this filming thing but can we stop for a second and actually think back to what happened? So let's go back to season 10. We're at season 10. Carol and Bethenny get into it. Ramona jumps in. Ramona starts saying that she being Bethenny, she showed up for camera time at a funeral, sort of trying to kind of shame Bethenny about how fame hungry and camera time hungry she is and whatever. Okay. Now, Bethenny goes to town defending herself about this, and Bravo. Bethenny is like, "No, Jill wanted us to film. Jill said it was okay. She was fine with it." Okay. And Andy jumps in too. Andy says, "Yeah, Jill invited us to film outside of the funeral." Okay. And they defend it and they're like, "Ha, told you," whatever. Right. And Andy says that he was actually glad that Bethenny was willing to film the scene outside of the funeral because the viewers loved Bobby. And it was sort of like a goodbye to Bobby for the viewers because he was a big part of the show as well. Okay. And this is a big point of contention at this reunion, but it kind of, it settles on Jill said we could. Andy confirms it. Bethenny steadfast is 100%, right? And even in our RHUGT, so Real Housewives Ultimate Girl Trip, Jill has her confessional, the season 2, where they're at Dorinda's, and Jill says, "Yeah, I said that they could film outside the funeral, but I said they could not film inside," which that's exactly what happened. They did not film inside. They only filmed a short, small scene outside, which was Bethenny and Jill talking for 2 seconds and crying, and that was it. So I'm confused as to what the problem is. Now, Jill is saying that I guess she didn't know Bethenny was mic'd. That's really hard for me to believe. I guess it's possible, but she still said it was okay for the cameras to be there. So it's like, okay, what does one person being mic'd matter? I don't know. Either way, it's Jill's husband's funeral, so fine. She gets to kind of make the rules about that. But I don't understand why Andy and Bethenny would both say that Jill invited them to film and make up this lie that could so easily be refuted by Jill. And now it's been like years since season 10. And not only has Jill not said that that was a lie from Bethenny and Andy, she's actually doubled down on saying that she allowed the cameras there on Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip. Because she said, yeah, I did say they could have them, outside the funeral. So anyways, Jill denies inviting them. And Andy says they have an email from Jill's assistant saying, inviting them. So I guess that's Jill's way. Like maybe Jill did that on purpose, because she's kind of trying to, I don't know, like she could say she didn't know that her assistant sent that, I guess. Like, I don't know. However, all that being said, Jill also wanted to do Roni Legacy. It didn't work out because she wouldn't give in to their numbers. Okay, so she wanted a certain amount to be paid for Legacy, which I'm on Jill's side with that. You have your price, and if they're not willing to pay it, then walk away, and that's what happened. Okay, it didn't work out. I think Jill thought that they would bend, but they wouldn't. And on top of that, I think Jill knows what kind of money Bravo has. She probably knows they could have paid her. I think that Bravo was looking for a way out, right? I think Bravo, what happened was that, we had this whole thing with Roni's last season being so contentious and between the audience, right? And we had probably half of the audience who were like, I'm done with Ramona. Get Ramona out of here. Get this cast out of here. They don't represent diversity in New York and this and that. And, the last season was so bad. And then you had the other half who were like, no, the last season was bad because of Leah and Ebony. And we just need to get rid of them and add in some other new people and keep our OG. So the audience was split. And, Andy has this, I don't know what we want to call it, idea, in quotes, that we'll have two Ronis, Roni Legacy and then the new Roni. So obviously this didn't work out. Do I think Roni or Bravo really wanted to do both? No. I think they just wanted to do the new one, start fresh, where they don't have to, worry about the bad press and all that kind of stuff. And they don't have to worry about, people bringing up the controversies from before again. Like, that's what I think happened. And I think Jill not agreeing to the price or the payday was an easy way for them to be like, I guess it's not going to work out. Sorry. Right? It's like, okay, well, Jill wouldn't do it. And we're seeing, and Bravo is seeing, the success of these Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trips. So why not just keep going with those? They're easier. They're less of a commitment. They could film with the original Roni ladies and kind of see how it goes and see how the ratings are, right? It's a much smaller commitment, and it costs Bravo a lot less money, and they're still going to make money on ratings and advertisements. So I think Jill is pissed about this, okay? Does she have a right, like I said, to demand whatever she wants to be paid? Yeah. However, Bravo also has the right to say, we don't want to pay that. It's not that important to us. Bye. That's a negotiation. That's what happened. Okay. Now, on top of that, Bethenny had what I think was a career trajectory, turning interview on Watch What Happens Live. From the outside looking in, you might watch this interview with Bethenny and think, yeah, it's a little bit contentious between her and Andy, but this is not like that big of a deal. We've seen much worse interviews out there. However, I think that this interview is really what created everything that's happening right now. So Bethenny was on Watch What Happens Live to promote her new podcast at this time. This was, I can't remember exactly when it was. I would have to look it up. But basically, she was on Watch What Happens Live. She's promoting Rewives, I believe it was called, her recap podcast. And Jeff Lewis also happened to be on. And he, we know how he is. I think he's hilarious, but I know some people hate him. But anyways, he likes to throw shade. He's quick, and he's kind of like, okay, another recap podcast. No one's done that before, which he's not wrong. But anyways, so he says that. And he's like, no, he's like, Bethenny, honestly, like, this is your chance to promote it. And Andy kind of asked her, like, what's different about it? Like, tell us, right? And she gets her back up against the wall. She gets very defensive. And she's like, oh, okay, I get it. This is an ambush, which honestly, from my perspective, I've watched it more than once. I don't think it's an ambush. I think Andy asked a question. Jeff Lewis kind of jumped on it in a sarcastic way because he wanted to just make fun of the fact that everyone has Housewives recap podcasts. And then I think Bethenny was just, if you don't tell Bethenny that her shit doesn't stink, she gets upset. When it comes to she has sort of made this image of herself as like the queen of the business world, right? All this stuff. And if you don't say what kind of fulfills that delusion, she gets very defensive. Okay, we've seen it time and time again, and you see her face in this moment transform. And she's like, this is an ambush. When it's not, it's just somebody pretty much pointing out a very obvious thing, which is that this is not a new original idea. However, they do acknowledge you haven't told us all the details, so maybe there is something original and new about it. Please tell us what that is. But there isn't anything new about it. The only thing she has to say is that, she's a former housewife. So that's what makes it, she's going to have like insider information and, things that other people don't know, and another way to put it and look at it. So like Tamara and Teddy, basically. Anyways, so, and the other reason that I do think that there was a little bit of snark coming from Jeff Lewis and Andy is because Bethenny had, up until that point, been talking shit. She just did, though. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. She said, Real Housewives is not good for women. It's, it's sexist. It pits women against each other. She said that. She did. And then Andy kind of calls her on it, which, fine, he should, why can't he? And he says, okay, well, you said this, whatever. And she's like, no, I never attacked Housewives. I've never did it. And they have this kind of back and forth. That episode, to me, it was when Bethenny decided, I'm done with Bravo. I'm done with Andy. Fuck you guys. That's what she said. That was her moment. Okay. I'm going to take you guys down too while I'm at it. Because I do think that Bethenny's ego and narcissistic traits are at a point where something like that would be enough to kind of push her to the edge. Okay. So that's how we have come to this moment. So then we have Bethenny, Jill Zarin. Jill Zarin's been burnt too. She's not going to be on Legacy. She's kind of burnt her Bravo bridge as well. She's not on the Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip New York either because, Bravo's not going to negotiate with her. They don't care to. They're over it. And now that she knows she's 100% not getting anything with Bravo in terms of being on TV again, now she's ready to bitch about them and to talk about them, which again, I'm not necessarily faulting her for that. Whatever experience she's had, she has the right to talk about. And she probably has a lot of valid points, and Bravo probably has dicked her around too. No one is saying that that's not true as well. Because remember, this is a podcast. I'm not looking at anything as black and white, okay? There, 5 things can be true at once, 2 things can be true at once, 20 things can be true at once, okay? So now we have, this sort of serendipitous podcast with Jill and Bethenny, which I don't think was serendipitous at all. I think that Bethenny purposefully had Jill on now as all this union stuff is happening. Because Bethenny she is a smart businesswoman, right? And she kind of knows how to get that momentum going, right? So she's seen all this kind of union stuff happening in the entertainment industry. She's pissed at Bravo. She knows Jill is pissed at Bravo too, has them on. Jill happens to reveal this quote unquote secret, this big reveal that is not a secret and not a big reveal at all. Like, can we all, like, Bethenny was the one wearing the mic. It's so crazy. And so in all this time, they never talked about that even in a text. Like, Jill never texted her after, why'd you show up to the funeral with the cameras? Like, and your mic on without like, never? And Bethenny even said that her and Brynn went to Jill's apartment off camera and had some like quality time. I don't know if that was before or after. I can't remember. I have to look it up. But then they also had their meeting on the plane. So they didn't talk about that on the plane. As like, it's just, I don't know. It's not making sense. And it doesn't align with Jill and what she said on Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip and what she's always maintained. So I don't know. Something is fishy here. So let's go to Bethenny and the union. So Bethenny is now, spearheading the possible organization of a union for reality TV employees. I want to start by saying that I'm in a union. I am a unionized worker, and I'm not just saying that. Both my parents were unionized workers. My dad was a union rep and leader for his school. He was a school teacher and he was a union rep leader for them for years. I grew up with that. I went on strike with the Teachers of Ontario during the Mike Harris years. I was in grade 8. It was about 97, 98. Any Canadians who are from Ontario who are my age know that was a big deal. And then in my own career and my own union, I've also been on strike as recently as 2019. I've been on the picket line in the winter, in the snow. I fully support unionized workers and unions, 100%. What I do not support is Bethenny Frankel leading them, because the creation and maintenance of a union is not something that can be done by a person who is doing it for vengeance for their own personal benefit. Okay. And I don't think, and it's really hard for me to see that she could possibly be doing this for the right reasons. It just seems like, not to sound like I'm from The Bachelor, but it really seems like she's doing this for self-serving reasons, and like this is her current thing that is, her cause of the day, and that she's going to be bored of it in a bit. Like it's really hard for me to say that, but I do think that because, I don't want to discourage people who are thinking of, unionizing, trying to get more rights. They absolutely deserve it. However, do I feel like she's really going to help them get there? I don't. I don't think she's going to help them get there. I think she can't. And the way that she's already going about it is it's already unraveling.
Have you ever gotten so sucked into a show that you just can't stop thinking about it? I'm writer Amy Archer, and I created my podcast, Little Miss Recap, for people just like you and me. On Little Miss Recap, we cover shows like Yellowstone, Yellow Jackets, and HBO's Love and Death. But we also do some documentaries like Shiny Happy People and The Curious Case of Natalia Grace. If you're looking for a podcast that overanalyzes things but also has fun, give Little Miss Recap a try. Find us wherever you get your podcasts.
Here's the thing about Bethenny. I saw a tweet on Twitter and it said, "Who is a dumb person's idea of an intelligent person?" And people were retweeting and it had a picture of Joe Rogan, which I thought was hilarious and accurate. Somebody else retweeted it and they put Bethenny. And it's kind of true. She talks a lot and she says very little of substance. Now, she does say some things that are accurate and true and smart, but I mean, statistically, that's what's going to happen when you never stop talking. You're going to finally land on something. But most of what she's been saying in these interviews and lately are things that have already been said and things that people already know and things that people have already tried to get out there. Now, yes, it can take somebody who people will listen to in order to get momentum for these things. Totally. However, is Bethenny the person that enough people are going to listen to? No, she's not. Because there's a lot of things about her that are going to cause her to be unable to, galvanize people and get them together. Sorry, I sound like Stassi's ex-boyfriend with galvanize. But anyways, if you know, you know. So I'm going to give you an example, okay? But one thing that she often does is that she will talk and she'll say things that have already been said and discussed. However, she spins it and kind of gives it like a certain tone. And the way that she says it's actually kind of brilliant because she makes old stuff sound new and it gets people excited. So I'll give her that, right? But it's actually not new and it's not groundbreaking and it's kind of been done before. Okay, so I'm going to play a little clip here of one that I think is a perfect example of basically, Bethenny saying something that she's acting like this is new. So this is via at TV Deets Instagram, where they posted these clips of Bethenny speaking to her phone as per usual. So listen up.
To the person who said that networks look for talent, not reality, networks look for advertisers who look for eyeballs of the purchasers of the household, women. Women look for drama on reality TV. To the person who said that it's already fair because I get to monetize it. Yeah, I got the same opportunity that hundreds of other people have had to monetize it and failed. So through blood, sweat, and tears, I worked my ass off to justify a $7,250 paycheck for multiple episodes in 2008, episodes that are still being used for monetization in 2023, where two entities are profiting and I am not. And so the monetization in my other businesses was a great justification to take that measly paycheck. And I worked my ass off through blood, sweat, and tears for that to happen. And as you can see by others who have failed, it's not as easy as it looks. To the TV, so you're just being you. Reality TV is heavily produced, heavily formatted, and it is a rough and tumble job. Just ask anyone who's been successful in reality TV. And you are not hiding behind the words of someone else where no one's going to bother you or cancel you if you say something in a moment of just being truly who you are or make a mistake. You are completely and utterly always exposed, and your life and career could end in an instant by just one wrong word.
Okay, so there's a few things there. So the first thing that she starts to talk about in that clip is she talks about how, everything we see on, well, not the first thing, sorry, but she starts to talk about how what we see is heavily produced and how reality TV is a rough and tumble job and it's hard work and that they have to, share everything and it's not just filming their real life. I mean, she does kind of contradict herself because she says it's a rough and tumble job and it's heavily, heavily produced. But then she says, you can just say whatever you want and you just speak off the cuff and it can ruin your life. Which, I mean, that does sound contradictory, but it's actually not, because that is how it is. But here's the thing. Most of the people, especially social media housewives people, know that reality TV is produced. Do I think that all the fans know how much work goes into it? No. But do we know that it's a job, that they get paid, that it's heavily produced? Yes. Everyone knows it's heavily produced. Then she has her other point about, oh, well, they're making, reality TV is about making money off of advertisers. And those advertisers are trying to sell to the women watching. And what do the women want? Drama. And like, yeah, thanks, Captain Obvious. Like, we know that reality TV is about making money off of advertisers. We know that's what Bravo's about. We're not stupid. And we also know that they're looking for a certain demographic audience. And we know that we're going to watch when there's more drama. Cool. Thanks for the info. Like, it's really, none of that is new or groundbreaking. Okay. Now, the one thing that she does say, the one point she makes, and I only played some of the video, is that, yeah, they can use your footage years later and you're not getting anything from it. Totally. Again, she's right about that. That's also not groundbreaking, and it has been brought up by other reality stars and other people before. And again, like, she goes on this whole, she never misses the chance to beef herself up, right? She goes on and on about how, very few were able to reach the level of success that she did and to promote her brands and create a business like she did and da-da-da. And again, I'm not saying that's not true, but of course, she has to throw that in there. Just remind everyone, the reason that I'm the person who should be speaking is because I'm the smartest, most savvy, the best businesswoman. I was able to, take that $7,000 they paid me and parlay it into Skinny Girl. And I had to work my ass off and da-da-da. And she always puts so much emphasis on how hard she worked, as though she's the only one. So all the other women who failed, there's kind of this implication maybe they didn't work as hard. So, they need her help because they're pathetic losers, unlike her. Anyways. So that's one thing that makes Bethenny maybe not the best leader for a union. Okay. She is too in her own head. Even though she pretends she's doing it for others, she's doing it for herself. Okay. It's really about, let me get back at Andy. And it's also really about her own ego. She likes it when others need her. Okay. I think that's part of the reason she does the be strong thing. Yeah, she's I don't really give a shit what the reason is. She's helping people. That's what matters. Her intentions aren't really that important. However, this is one of those cases. This isn't like a tornado where anyone flying in with money and supplies and giving it to people is helpful. This is different. This requires a specific type of leadership, camaraderie, work. It does not, a union, and I had a follower who sent this to me who's also in a union, and they said to me, unions are not built through people making videos of themselves on social media. There's most of what needs to happens not on social media, not online at all, and happens with people organizing in an important, thought out, intelligent way. Not going on a TikTok video and listing demands out into the universe to no one specific. Okay. So another thing that she says in another one of her videos is she talks about her and Andy. She says, we came up together. I was the highest paid housewife of all time, which I need to double check that, because I thought Nene was the highest paid housewife of all time. Yeah, I'm going to get back to you. I feel like that's a lie. She also says she's in a position to head this thing because she's not a former disgruntled employee. That's a lie. I would strongly disagree with that. To me, she is maybe one of the most disgruntled, actually. She says she's also the person to do it because she doesn't need the job. She has the money. No. That's actually no. The best people to do it are the people who are in the job doing it. That's how unions work. The people who are in the unions are the workers. Okay? It's a workers' union. It's not, super rich millionaire lady leading all the workers of Amazon or all the teachers or etc. who has absolutely nothing to lose. She's like, I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose. I check my bank account. I'm good. That's why you're not right for this, because you have nothing to lose. If she gets bored of it next week, she can do whatever she wants. If she screws up the deal for everyone and makes some bad decisions, doesn't affect her. Affects all these other people who still need the income and the jobs, doesn't affect, no skin off her back. The best person to do this would be somebody who is currently a reality star and is also a highly wanted and coveted reality star who's still in it. She's not coveted. Okay? Since Real Housewives of New York, she's tried to have a couple other shows and they've all failed. So she's not like a hot commodity in the reality world. Okay? She's not the person to do this. I don't know how else to say it. I just can't stop saying it because there's so many reasons. So she says, then she goes on another speech about how Andy always puts Bravo and Housewives first. Oh my God, where's my Meryl Streep meme from The Devil Wears Prada? Andy puts Bravo and Housewives first? Groundbreaking. Thank you. Never knew that. The first point of contention between her and him, and she says this straight out. So I made this prediction, but she says straight out in one of these videos, was when she went on Watch What Happens Live to promote Rewives. And she says, again, I felt ambushed. But guys, she's not disgruntled, okay? She's very happy. Everything's good. And then she says, yeah, I was ambushed, but that's the name of the game. That's the name of the game there, right? And she kind of acts like she's fine with it. And she's like, that's how it works. The show is polls, talking about Watch What Happens Live. It's produced questions. It's designed to make people look bad. That's a direct quote, by the way. She says it's designed to make people look bad. But again, listeners, everyone, she's not disgruntled. Okay? And she said, that's how it is. You have to take your hits. You have to take your hits. And again, she says all this very fast. She speaks quickly on purpose because it allows her to spew more misinformation and lies. That's actually one of her tactics. Now, she says, she's had opinions on reality TV, but she hasn't felt totally comfortable expressing that throughout these years, which is very hard to believe because all I see is her expressing opinions all the time, including about Housewives. Because, and she says, I didn't want to say anything bad about Housewives or the place that I came from, because that's where she came from, even though like one of the first things she did after she left Housewives would say how it's bad for women. So, and she's not 100%, again, she's not 100% wrong about that, but let's not pretend that you quit Roni and we've never heard from you since, because it's actually quite the opposite. Okay. So she's grown very comfortable with saying these things. And then she says, oh, I've grown uncomfortable with certain things. So she leaves it quite vague. And then she says she's felt, quote unquote, unsafe. She knows that is a way to get people going. Okay? Because it's become part of our cultural language, the languaging around feeling safe, being in a safe space. It goes along with mental health, with everything, right? So now she's using that kind of unsafe, but doesn't say what it was. And of course, that's going to get people going, right? Like, oh, these big corporations are putting people in a bad position. They probably are. This is the sad part. A lot of the stuff that she's saying has truth to it. The problem is that I'm looking at the intentions behind it. And I'm looking at her ability to actually do something good for people. Okay? So again, the only thing she cites as a specific example of quote unquote unsafe is the funeral incident, which she says was exploitation. I've already talked about that, so I'm not going to go on. But she also says she's heard stories of people whose spouses have lost jobs. So is she talking about like Whitney's husband on Salt Lake City or Louis on Real Housewives of New Jersey? I mean, again, that's not this new revelation that she's telling the rest of us. We know about that too. We watched it on the show. They talked about it on the show. Now, she talks afterwards about how they can't work on projects or continue their own businesses, reality talent, once they leave the show because of these like ironclad contracts with Bravo or whoever the reality network might be. Okay, that's a fair point. And again, is it a brand new point? No. Is it a point that needs more attention and discussion right now? Yes. I think it should be discussed and talked about amongst people in the entertainment field and reality stars amongst themselves as they attempt to unionize. Is Bethenny talking about it on TikTok and Entertainment Tonight, etc.? I don't know if that's really doing anything. Okay. And to me, that was one of her only points that was really strong. And she says, I know I'm right. I know I'm right here. I've talked to 100 people and they've all told me I'm right. I know I'm right. She says it a few times. So again, it's like she always shoots herself in the foot because she always brings it back to herself. Okay. She goes on about how all the housewives suck up to Andy. They all clamor to be his best friend and his favorites change all the time. Again, all things that everyone already knew, like duh. I mean, people have been calling for Andy to be fired on Twitter every reunion because they don't like how he has a favorite and how this is not news. As she even gets into like Raquel. Okay, so she says Raquel shouldn't settle. Raquel needs to get paid. Her life has completely fallen apart for this show and it's been ripped to shreds and, she's being thrown to the wolves. I mean, I guess, okay, but Raquel it's going to be hard for people to accept that point because Raquel tried so desperately to get on the show, right? Like she wasn't somebody that Bravo even wanted. She literally, in my opinion and a lot of other people's, started dating James just to get on the show. And then a lot of people think that her sleeping with Sandoval was to kind of secure her role on the show. So it's hard. It's going to be hard for that as an example because I don't think a lot of people are going to have empathy for that, right? Especially when like the other people on the show, like Ariana, Sheena, all these other people who have shared their lives for 10 years and who've really been through the ringer and who've really done the work, they I think in their viewpoint, Raquel in some ways almost took like a shortcut to get on the show and to get famous. And Raquel's still saying she wants to be in it. So that's what makes this a tricky situation. Does that mean that Raquel shouldn't get any residual pays or any benefits? No, of course she should. They're making money off her back, of course. But all that being said, the way that Bethenny expresses it is like, oh, she's just like this like innocent pawn who's been like thrown to the wolves, everything that's happened to her. It's all Bravo's fault. Like we can't 100% take away the fact that she did this somewhat for notoriety and because she wanted to be the big shot on the show. Like we can't completely ignore that. Both those things are true at the same time. Okay, because again, this is like a gray area and it's messy. So then Bethenny lists her 10 conditions, which she's quote unquote called for. Pay raise for reality stars, so they get like 10% with each new contract as long as the show is successful. And, she calls it the Bethenny clause. Like, because again, this is really about her ego and about her patting herself on the back, right? She wants people to love her, to thank her. She wants to be like, the queen. She wants people to bow down to her. She wants to have legions of fans. She wants to be like the person who helps the underdog. I think that's why she did the whole be strong thing. I think it's part of it. I hope that a lot of it or most of it is because she wanted to help people, but I do think a lot of it was for herself. I think a lot of the reason why she was trying to like quote unquote take down the Kardashians and go after them with their makeup lines, their body image, etc. Again, I think and she was like, they're trying to silence me, if you remember all that. Again, I think it's because she knew that there would be a section of society on social media that would be like, yeah, get him, Bethenny, the big bad Kardashian corporation. Like, I do think she wants to be like the David versus Goliath. And then we'll all be like her little mini Davids behind her. She almost wants to set herself up like she's the same as the rest of us. She just happens to have millions. But that's not true. She even goes on about how her doing this is what's going to inspire, and she lists nurses and teachers to unionize. Okay, I'm speaking from a Canadian perspective. Our nurses and teachers are unionized and have strong unions. That doesn't mean that governments don't try to go up against us, but they do. So I thought that they did in the States. I could be wrong because you guys have the whole private healthcare thing. We don't have that. I'm pretty sure teachers do in the States. But anyway, she names other ones. Again, maybe she means like it'll encourage them to have stronger unions. I don't know. But her opinion on unions, none of them are new. And others have been saying this, like Nene, Carol, writer girl, had a tweet about it, about how, they still use footage and clips from Carol's time on the show and she never sees any money for it and they need to have better rights and better contracts. Like, she tweeted that. A lot of other people are like, how would Bethenny feel if Skinny Girl employees unionized? And I would like an answer to that question. Also, she had her show on HBO, Big Shot with Bethenny or whatever it was. And, from what I recall, a lot of it was about being like, how, you got to be cutthroat. How are you going to survive in business? If you want to work for me, you've got to be able to do this and that, and had all their contestants like doing ridiculously borderline inhumane things that would never be allowed by an actual union. And, basically working and doing stuff for free so that they could get this like quote unquote internship / job with her. And like, it was ridiculous. And it was also a failure, the show, I mean. And it's like, okay, that doesn't seem to me like a person who is the one who should be leading the next possible union. She's also encouraging, reality TV stars to go on strike. But they've got to organize themselves first. Like, they can't just, I don't know exactly how it would work, but strikes are done within legalities. Okay. They are done, at certain times during certain contract negotiations. Can every reality star out there refuse to film all of a sudden right now and have it work? Absolutely. Is it realistic? No. Okay. There needs to first be organization, discussion, and real effort put in and decisions made. It can't just be Bethenny goes on social media, says, guys, everyone strike, and then they all do. It's not going to happen. And that's why she can't be the leader. Okay. Because as she said, her bank account is good. She doesn't have anything to lose. What skin is it off her back if she tells all the reality stars to go on strike? She's not going on strike. She's willing to be irrational, illogical, overly risky, to make poor decisions. She's willing to, maybe encourage people to do things that might be good things to do, but maybe not right now, or that first have to have certain steps taken before they fully jump into it. Right? But she doesn't have to worry about any of that, because she's not currently working as a reality star. Right? That's why I'm not going to ask someone who doesn't work in healthcare to lead the nurses union. or somebody who has no experience or sorry, isn't currently working in education to lead a teachers union, right? I'm not going to ask Elon Musk to head the teachers in their next union. So, she's operating out of emotion and vengeance. As much as she's trying to convince everyone that she's not, she is. She's even recently blamed Andy, and this is what, to me, the nail in the coffin. She's recently blamed Andy for why she married Jason Hoppy. Like, she has seriously been like, he told me I should marry him, and it was the worst mistake of my life. Okay. Cool. Like, I don't even think I need to go into why that's insanity. Especially considering that she was pregnant in her wedding dress. Anyways. So Bethenny also, we have to look in, there's another side of this. She was accused of being a producer on a show about moms. And there was a TikTok star who was, or a popular TikTok personality who was supposed to be on it. And that person was basically kind of outed Bethenny on TikTok and was telling everyone that in the contract with Bethenny's show that Bethenny was going to be a producer on, she wouldn't be able to basically have other jobs or work on any other projects and make any income anywhere else. So I'm going to read it. So this is posted by @BravoBoo. Bravo_Boo, BOO. So it was Bunny Hidea's, I hope I'm saying that right, contract under Bethenny Frankel's reality show Mafia Moms that never aired. Okay, so she says, so this is so she says, I'm literally about to post my contract. It was so exploitative. I believe $22,000 for the year. Okay. And then basically Bethenny wanted to put hidden cameras in her home and 15% of any of her brand deals on TikTok before the show even aired. Okay. And then there's a screenshot of it. We received it's an email that says we received our contracts. Just to recap, we are filming, it's blanked out, the name of the show, a reality show. The contracts are completely in their favor. But there are two major points I wanted them to change that are non-negotiable before we start negotiating. One being, they said we have to release all rights to privacy and hidden cameras and listening devices in our home. That is completely unacceptable, considering we have families and children. The second is they want 15% of all likeliness royalties starting sign of contract. I have built an online following of over 550,000 followers since March, and I refuse to pay them anything on my deals until the show airs. I also had a long and aggressive back and forth with, and then it's blanked out, over me starting my own podcast that I did anyways, since again, they have not promoted us at all. After I have them change those 2 points, because those are non-starters for me, I will send it over. Or if they give me any pushback, the contract is for 5 seasons. Okay. So that was... So then she sent a letter. Yeah, so that was the letter to her lawyer that she sent. 15% of their income before the show even went live. So that would be a year before filming and editing. Okay. And it also says in the contract, without limiting the foregoing, I acknowledge and agree that during my participation in the project, I shall have no expectation of privacy and that any and all of my actions may be recorded, included by hidden cameras and listening devices, and used by company, including without limitation in and in connection with the project and all ancillary and derivative materials thereof. That's what the contract said. So this is the person who is going to be, the people's defender. This is the person who's going to be the one to start a union for reality stars. I don't think so. Okay. I mean, like, it is really all for ego and revenge. I mean, like, there's literally this clip of her that I also have saved. Hang on. In case we forgot. Where she's really talking, and she has a pathological obsession with being number one and number one in people's minds. I think that she had it for a while. Like when she returned to Real Housewives of New York season 7 to 10, like she was it, right? And then even for a while, her like notoriety and the legend of Bethenny on New York continued, right? But then because Bethenny can't shut up, she sort of ruined her own brand. And on top of that, the pandemic happened and there was a big cultural shift away from, dieting and diet culture and things. And people started to see that skinny girl was like an offensive name. And there was just all this stuff happen, right? And I think she's been kind of trying to get back that feeling and chasing it ever since. And I think that's part of what fame does to people. So hang on, here's my clip.
Book and have a New York Times bestseller and then everyone doing it. How do I explain being the first celebrity female invented the first ever low-calorie ready-to-drink cocktail? It sounds like I'm bragging. How do I explain being the first housewife ever to write a book and have a New York Times bestseller and then everyone doing it? How do I explain being the first celebrity female invented the first ever low-calorie ready-to-drink cocktail? It sounds like I'm bragging. How do I explain being the first house?
Yeah, so she's the first one to do everything. I'm sure if we looked up, some actual dates, etc., we would find that there are inconsistencies in that non-humble brag. But either way, does Bethenny deserve some credit for the stuff that she's done? Yeah. I'm not trying to take that away from her. The problem is that I feel like she's using it for, I don't know what else to call it, but evil in some ways right now. So let's not also forget when she sent cease and desist to smaller influencers on TikTok, and Meredith Lynch, who spoke negatively about her Skinny Girl brand, she sent a cease and desist to and threatened to sue. She also had, like I said before, the whole thing with the Kardashians. No one feels bad for the Kardashians. No one cares. But I'm just saying that she always is looking for a target, right? It's like she's always moving on to the next thing. And I think that's why she gets made fun of on social media so much because, she's always kind of like, this is my new cause of the day, right? Every week it's something new. At first it's like me trying every single type of skincare. And then it's like me obsessing over taking down the Kardashians and talking about body image. Then it's talking about this. And then nothing was working and sticking. So she went back to Housewives. Even though she had to maybe suck up her pride and it was maybe a little embarrassing because, as Andy said, she did talk shit and say it was bad for women after she got off the show. But she decided, you know what, the only thing people are really going to listen to her about and not make fun of her for is Housewives. So she started the podcast. But then Andy and Jeff made fun of her and she was pissed. And now this is her new thing. And she has found something that no one can, or that she thinks at least, that no one can say anything bad to her about. Otherwise you look like the bad guy. Because if you question her intentions and motives and all that, it's like, oh, well, you're just on the side of the corporation and you don't want the little guy to unionize and to have rights and get paid and da-da-da. Like, she knows she can fall back on that. And when people criticize her, she can say to them, oh, they're just trying to silence me, guys, like power to the people. They're trying to silence me. She can always go back to that, right? She's found this thing. It's like with Be Strong. No matter what her intentions were, the way she did it, whatever, she was helping people. So that's why that worked so well for her and why she loved it so much. Okay. Except this is different. Like I said, this is, I think, going to come back to bite her in the ass. Number one, it's not going to happen. I don't think that she has for all the reasons I've given, she doesn't have the ability nor will people follow her. You need to be someone that people will follow. They're not going to follow her for all the reasons I just said. Right? And at the very most basic, raw reason is her intentions are not good. Okay. And I know intentions are not everything. In this case, they do matter though. They don't always matter. In this case, they do. Okay. It's also the fact that she's not in it anymore. Right. Her logic of to be a good union leader, you have to be not in the profession, that it's inherently flawed. So, hopefully Bethenny's not listening, because she'll probably like sue me or send me a cease and desist or whatever. But again, these are just my opinions. Okay? These are all my opinions. And they're my opinions as somebody who, again, is experienced, has been in a union for over a decade. I do know things about it. I did grow up around them, and I am a supporter of that. So for the housewives out there and the reality stars out there, you should start a union and you should organize yourselves. I don't know exactly where you should start and exactly how to do it, but I don't think it's with Bethenny. All right. So thank you everyone for listening to all my many, many, many thoughts on this. But this is one of those ones that it's been really getting under my skin because, it's an important topic, and I'm very happy that social media is talking about it, especially with the writer's strike, who I 1000% support. And it's very troubling to me that she's hijacking the conversation. She's hijacking an important conversation, and one that needs to be productive, and making it not productive. Because instead, what everyone is talking about, including myself, I guess I'm guilty of this too, is her. And that's kind of part of the inherent problem as well. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining me for this bonus episode. Even though I may have sounded upset, I had fun recording it. And I will see you all next week. Have a great day. Bye. Thanks for listening, everyone. Please follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Bravo and Botox. And if you'd like to support me and the show, please rate, review, and subscribe to the show. You can also visit buymeacoffee.com/Bravo and Botox to send your love through some much needed caffeine. Until next time and our next Bravo paper, bye.